Welcome everyone. Today we have another new episodes, and most important thing is that research is ultimately very important for the intellectual community. World Talent Economy Forums, we are working with World Research Unions, and we do more focus on intellectual activities. We do more focus on research and this kind of things. And we have one of our honorable professor from Independent University, Bangladesh. He is Professor Dr. Muhammad Mamun Habib. He did a lot of work in the research area, and he is a very renowned professional in that area. And he will introduce his activities with our audience. And most important thing is that we will know that how we can publish more research papers in high impact journals. So Professor Dr. Muhammad Mamun Habib, can you please introduce yourself with our audience? And you have a very strong background in research. So yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. Can you see my slide?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. First of all, I'm so much honored to become the part of this one. And basically, today our discussion on the publishing the high quality, high impact research paper. And you know that when we are working in the research field, we always mention that no need to disclose ourselves, as we have the best search option, the Google with us. So I'd like to request the audiences just write down my name in the Google search option and please explore me.
Mhm.
That's all about myself. So
Mhm.
yeah, I believe that we have to start our session. Basically, our discussion very important, especially the publication related discussion. So can
Mhm.
I start now?
Yes, Professor. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Basically, as you understand that our discussion on the publication. So first of all, I like to start by the little bit the basic idea about the research. Is that the first question come up that what is the research? Very simply way you can say that research means search again, search again, search. Come to the question is that from where you have to start. You know what is the starting point of the searching and how you will do this one. I would like to remind you again what I said in the first time when I introduced myself. Go to the Google. So Google is the first platform where you can start for searching. I would like to request that if you have any research idea in your mind where you can start, you have to start from the Google search option. So just go to the Google and write down something. So say your target is that you like to do the research on the artificial intelligence. Go to the artificial intelligence and write down that artificial intelligence Google, and you can get lots of things. As you know that whatever you receive, whatever you get through the Google search option, that will be the secondary data. So that is the first search option, how you could start. I like to show you some of the networking side where you can get some idea and how you can get some interaction with the professors or scholars as well as academicians as well as the young scholar. So one of my requests is that you have to open your own site, own page in the Google Scholar, Academic Review, or Research Kit. What I said earlier, that is the networking side. I believe most of the audiences, you have the Facebook account. You know that you are spending lots of time on Facebook. So why not we can move some of our time from the Facebook to this kind of networking site. Google Scholar, Academic Review, Research Kit, the basic networking site. So if you have an account there, you can visit there regular basis, at least for a few minutes, and you can get the new idea, new concept, new professor, new academician, new researcher. That is the way that how you could start the research new idea. If you have the like one publication in the Scopus in the journal or Web of Science in the journal, then a Scopus ID, ORCID ID, researcher ID will be created automatically. These three things, researcher ID, Scopus ID, ORCID ID, if you have, then automatically you can visit those sites and you can get the new idea from there. who that what is the new idea in any specific research area, and who are the researchers, what they are doing. If you get some idea, it is the way that how you can get a new concept to start. Online database. Basically, I'd like to remind you one issue is that do not visit the many online databases. It is the best option is that you have to choose the on online database. That is very important thing is that if you visit the on online database, there will be synchronization. If you change your online database, then there is a possibility of redundant work. We personally suggest you that when you search on the Google search option, you are getting some online database as well. But if you go to directly to the online database, you can get something like the Emerald, like your Procoes, Elsevier, the Science React, so on. And you know that what I said earlier, that if you visit the one online database regular basis, that when you go to the suppose today is October 16, you are going to the one Emerald. So you are visiting the Emerald and you explore the five papers. Now you can download the five papers and you have to keep the one folder based on the date and save it. Again, Emerald you can visit after the 10 days. Now you explore another four papers, so now you can download and make it the folder by the name of the date and then keep it. That is the way that how you can do the searching option for the online database. Again, I remind you, we prefer personally the one online database. Check your library, which one is available, based on that you can decide which one you can choose. You remember earlier I mentioned that you have to search from the Google. As you know that when you search in the Google, you will get the both kind of publications, open access publication as well as traditional publication. Traditional or conventional publication means suppose the that McGraw Hill, like Sage publication or the Amazon. So in order to download those publication, you have to purchase. And now come to the question is that young scholar, you do not want to pay. You like to get the free access. So what is the option for the free access? Then definitely you have to go for the open access. You understand that when you search in the Google, you can get the both open access and traditional access. But as your target is that open access, with the free of cost you could download, then why not? You can directly visit the open access site. Intech is the leading open access in the world. Basically, Intech they started their journey in 2004, and so you understand that it's not very old or access. And basically, open access is one kind of movement. Initially, lots of librarians they were against open access. And 2009, Intech was indexed in the Web of Science as well as the Scopus index. So that is another milestone. Intech. You know that I suggest you that you have to spend more time on the Intech open access. And again, remind you that what is the open access, the free access. You can download. So this is the one example of the Intech as open access. There are other open access as well. I like to request, if possible, you can go to the Google and write down open access publisher. Maybe you can get the more open access publisher. That will be the more fruitful for you. What I said that when you search in the Google, you can get that open access as well as traditional access. So sometimes you can see that you could not download. It means that it comes from the like traditional conventional access publishing. Sometimes you could download. It's open access. So we recommend you. Why not? You can visit the open access directly so that you can get the more free access publication. Okay, so we are talking about the how you can get the new idea, how you can get the new concept. Now, come to the point is that you know that nowadays we are too much dependent on online. So, how you store your search? I mentioned earlier, according to the date, you are storing the papers and publication. So, you know what I said there. Suppose today you are downloading five papers, keep it by the according to the date, and then after 5 days or 10 days, again you can download another four papers, keep it in the folder. Those you are doing the PhD, as you know, the PhD is a long journey, the 3 years, 4 years journey. So what happened in most of the cases, initial first year, if you search any papers, and after the suppose the 1 or 2 year, you lost your document. It's very normal problem, and especially finally when you come to the like referencing, that time you couldn't get your raw files. So in order to confirm that everything is available, so that's why when you start to search, you have to make sure that it should be stored properly. So what is the best option of the storing? We personally recommend the soft copy storing. Soft copy storing. So I personally recommend you have to use the Dropbox is the best option. From anywhere in the world, you can open, you can download, you can check, you can share. If it is not possible, then second option the Google Drive. Google Drive, there is a limitation of the there's the size capacity limitation. So what is the stored copy storing? What we are talking about the soft copy storing. At the same time, you just remember, even you can review the soft copy storing. You have the storage in the soft copy. Now you have to review. If it's a PDF file, you can use a sticky note. If it's a Microsoft Word file, you can use the review option. So you can also the review the paper in terms of soft copy. I personally discourage the hard copy. Now it is very difficult. You are in one country, you are in the now visiting the other country. You have to read the papers. You can do the research. So let's reduce that hard copy story. But if you love to use a hard copy, no problem. But in that case, you just remember that whether the documents will be available next 2 or 3 years. Okay, so now we got the idea how we can get the new idea from different platform, and then how we can store the papers. Now, I believe that you have some paper. As you have some paper, now comes the question is that how will review the paper? I'm involved with the PhD supervision, so I have a few PhD students. So how we are doing the supervision? I always mention my PhD scholars. The first year of your PhD, you have to search the papers, you have to review the papers. In terms of quantity, it should be the within 1 year 1,000 research paper you have to review. And now comes the question: how will you review the 1,000 papers in 1 year?
Mhm.
So that is some tricky process to review the papers. What I said is the initial level of your PhD research. Basically, I'm talking about the PhD. I believe some of them, they're professors level, faculty member. I think you already know this one. But we are talking about basically the young scholars, how they will pursue their new idea, how they will pursue the new research. So at first, you have to look at the abstract, the contents of the abstract. So this is the first indication. If the abstract is within your area of what you are looking, if the abstract is your target point, so keep it. If the abstract is okay, then you have to go to the conclusion. If your abstract is okay, then you have to go to the conclusion. And now in the conclusion, what you have to search. This very interesting thing is that you have to search in the conclusion, the findings. Is there any specific finding, recommendation, what they say in the paper? Is there any limitation? Is there any implication? Is there any future work? If you have findings, if you have recommendation, limitation, implication, future work, that is the starting point of your research. Their limitation, you starting point. Their future works, you starting point. So what I said that when you store the papers, so you have to check this one very carefully after the abstract then conclusion, whether you have this kind of the options in the conclusion. If they mention clearly, that could be starting point of your research. So look very carefully. The previous research works are the starting point of your research, of your new idea. Then after the conclusion, if it's understandable, it's possible to apply in your research, then I suggest you go to the introduction, then go to the literature review and so on. I personally recommend you do not review the statistical analysis the first review because statistical analysis is always changing. And when you do the statistical part after 1 year, 2 year, you don't know which statistical tools you have to use. Yes, when you will do your statistical part, that time you can review the statistical analysis part of it. This is a starting point, how you'll review the paper, go to the abstract, and then go to the conclusion. If you get the new idea from there and keep it with you, and you have to go for further research. Okay, so I just share the basic idea of the research so that you can think. There are different types of research. I believe most of the audiences, you have some idea about this one. What's the participants? You're familiar with this. I don't want to spend more time here. There are the expert research, descriptive research, causal research. I just give the in brief idea. Exploratory means explore the new idea, new concept, new model. Does not provide any conclusive evidence. And we assume that exploratory research, subsequent research must be there. Prospective researcher, they will use your research work. So this is the exploratory research. What is the best example of the exploratory research? PhD research. Your PhD research basically the exploratory, explore the new idea, new concept, new model. And descriptive research, basic descriptive research based on the any characteristics of population, phenomena, object, organization. And you have a little bit idea about the descriptive research. And what I said earlier, just remember one thing is that we are talking about the best organization, real life problem, all are descriptive research. If you look very carefully in terms of uncertainty, you can say this way: exploratory research, the absolute ambiguity, fully uncertain. We do not know what will happen. When you start the exploratory research at the first stage, you don't know. Maybe after 2 or 3 years, you can understand what you are now going to do. On the other hand, the descriptive research, the certain research based on organization. You like to do the research on the KFC or McDonald's. This is certain research. You know the KFC, you know the McDonald's, so that means you have some understanding. And finally, the causal research is the completely the certain. So, what is the example of the causal research? Like comparative study between the two, among the three, something like that. So, what I said that causal research that completely certain. So, look very carefully. Exploratory, this is a completely uncertain. You don't know what will happen. Certain, and then descriptive is the certain, and then a causal research completely certain. Again, I remind you, I don't want to discuss too much about this part because this is not our main part. Our main part is coming. That time we have to spend more time. This is another type of research, the basic and applied research. So if you ask me what is the basic research, I would make it very simply that this is a unique research, it's pure research. If you ask me what is the pure research, I would say that develop the new model, new concept, new idea. That is the basic research. It could be exploratory research, what I said earlier. So PhD research is one of the example of the basic research. On the other hand, applied research is basically application based, a real life application. The very interesting thing is that you have to start to think in this way that how you can apply your research. So that's why we like to use this one, that applied research. I personally recommend you that you remember earlier I mentioned about this one, that descriptive research, causal research. So there is some link up. Basic research is the exploratory research, and applied research means what is the descriptive or causal research. And this is another type of research, the qualitative and quantity research. This is another type of research, qualitative and quantity research. I think it's very popular. When you write down your research paper, you have to mention this one, that what type of research. So brief discussion so they can understand. Make it very simple. Quantity research means the quantity. So the quantity comes from the statistical analysis. Quantity will come up from the statistical tools. So say suppose if you are using the 200, 300 respondents, you are doing the survey and you are applying the statistical analysis, that is a quantity research. On the other hand, if you do that like the small sample size, like the suppose the 5 to 10, the expert's opinion, and based on the subject interpretation, that is the quality research. So now come to the point is that suppose when you do the research in the business administration, if you do the research in engineering, all of the quantity research. On the other, if you do the research, the psychology, philosophical research, sociological research, anthropology research, all of the quality research. So make it very simple. If you have a quantity, if you have statistical analysis, it's a quantity research. If there is no statistical analysis, very simply, based on your personal judgment, personal opinion, is a quality research. So we define the research a few types. First of all, we mentioned that expert research, descriptive research, causal research. And then we mentioned about the basic and applied research. Now we mention quality of quantity research. Today, our main discussion we are coming that time we have to use the types of research. Now, we got the idea of the research publication. Research. What is the research? Now we are moving to the like our next part, the research publication. This is a very important discussion. Is that you have to think about this one that how you can get the research publications idea. I know that many professors sometimes they also this question comes to them. They could not get the idea that how they will convey to the masses to the students. Because very important issue is that you have to need the research idea so that you can think how you can produce the publication. I just give you the two example so that you can get some new idea that how you can get the tips for the publication. Say you are a university professor, you are a university faculty member, so you have the regular semester. So your student they have some research project, so semester project, term paper, something like that. You know that if you have a PhD student, then it's very easy. You can get the publication topics. But if you don't have the PhD student, then it's difficult to get publication topics. So you have to go to the student research project, the semester project, term paper. Just regular class, undergraduate level, master's level. So if you think that this project is very fruitful, so then you can invite the student, why not you can produce the publication. This is one option for your regular teaching work. And the second option is that suppose we have a lots of students, those are graduated, already they do the job. So when they are doing the job, they are getting some challenge in the real life application.
Dear audience, I think that he has some issue with internet, so he gonna join with us soon.
Hello, hello. Do you face any? Are you listening?
Yes, 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 yes.
Okay. Okay. Sorry for the interruption. What I said that when our graduated students when they are doing the job in the practical field, they are getting some challenge in the real life application. When delivering the class lecture, this is theoretical knowledge, but when they're applying the real life application, this is practical knowledge. So let us explore: is there any gap between the theoretical knowledge and practical knowledge? If you have any gap between the theoretical knowledge and practical knowledge, based on this gap, we can produce another publication. So this publication comes from the real life application. So I just give you the two options that how you can get the idea of the publication. Now there are various types of publication, as you know that our today topic the research publication. So there's a conference paper, journal paper, book chapter, or editorial book, and finally the solo author book. I don't want to talk too much, but I just make sure one thing is that if you are the very young scholar, if you are the like a PhD scholar, if you are the master's level student or the undergraduate level student, then your first target the conference paper. Join some international conference, do some networking, create some of the like the opportunity for getting the new authors, co-researchers, something like that. Suppose if you are doing the research, you have to join the international conference, you have to present your paper in the international conference in front of the audiences, try to get their opinion. And based on their opinion, you can revise your paper. Now you can think how you can publish the paper in the journal. If you ask me that what is the difference between the conference paper and journal paper, I just make it very simply way to explain. Conference paper is a primary school, and journal paper is a high school. So you can move to the high school without the primary school. So you always mentioned as a researcher, let us think at first the conference paper, then you can go to the journal paper. That is the way. But if you jump directly journal paper, no problem, you can. But the question is that still you have to get some knowledge based on the conference paper. And now come the question is that in the journal, how you can get that the quality of a journal. This is another issue because before going to the discussion of the publication, first of all, you have to check the editor in chief. The first thing is the editor in chief, editor board member. Usually, but you know that Web of Science indexing or the what you said that Scopus indexing or ABDC indexing, they at first they like to check that editor-in-chief profile. If the journal editor-in-chief is a high profile, renowned researcher, there is a possibility that there's a good journal because he knows how he'll make it. It will take time, but he knows it. Then secondly, they like to check the editor board member. Whether the editor board member from the various continents, various countries. If you notice that you're all editor board member from the one country from China, you're all editor board member from the one country from the USA, you're all editor board member from the one country India, something wrong. It should be the multi-continents, multicultural, multinational. It's very important editor board member. Then you can check the whether peer-reviewed journal or not. It's a mandatory. It's mandatory peer-reviewed journal. As I know that in Malaysian university, there is the obligation that for the PhD completion, you have to need the one Scopus in the journal paper, or you need the like the two peer-reviewed journal paper. So peer-reviewed is a very another key point. So whether they are the peer-reviewed journal paper they are using or not. Definitely the blind review nowadays you are preferring. ISSN number must be there, and place of publication. But in order to understand the quality of the papers, that you can do one thing. You can go to the journal site and you can see their archives. If you notice that archives that they're now, you can see their authors, you can see the country, you can see the earlier paper. That is the another way that you can understand the quality of the journal paper. And then publication ethics and publication malpractice statement. It should be available. It's very important discussion that ethical issue in the publication is must be stated in the journal site. And then indexing question will come up. The initial index in the Google Scholar, like what you call it, the AppSco or the directory of the OpenX journal, this is a basic index. If you have until this one, you can understand this is a quality journal. The next level is that you have to think whether the Web of Science in the journal or Scopus in the journal. I think you know the in terms of the acceptance level, Web of Science in the journal is the highest level. Then the Scopus in the journal. Again, but I can remind you that it is not the necessary that all researcher you have to publish the paper in the Web of Science in the journal or Scopus in the journal. Because you know that sometimes the Scopus in the journal paper and Web of Science in the journal paper will take long time. Officially, it will take the 1 year to onward. Sometimes the 1.5 year to 2 years. So I noticed that many of my PhD scholars, when they're planning for the Web of Science in the journal or the Scopus in the journal, when it's taking the long time, more than 1 year, sometimes they are demotivated. They don't want to publish any more paper. So that's why I always request my researchers, colleagues, my PhD scholars, that do not go to the Scopus in the journal fast. You have to start from the peer-reviewed journal. The publication should be the 6 to 8 months. So within 6 to 8 months, when you have a one publication or two publication, then when you go to the Google, you can write down your name, you can get your paper. It's all kind of self-motivation for doing the pursuing the further research. So when you have the one or two or three or few peer-reviewed journal paper, then let's move to the like Scopus in the journal and Web of Science in the journal. So that is the way that how you can move to the next level. If you like to go to directly the Web of Science in the journal or Scopus in the journal, there is a possibility of demotivation. And I always mention that in the research area, if you are demotivated, you cannot continue your research work. So that is our another target, how you can understand the self motivation in the research. Okay, so that is our quality of the journal paper. So before going to the discussion of the like the outline of the research journal publication, I just make sure another one thing: editorial book and then solo author book. It's a continuous process. When you have more than 20 journal papers, then you get the offer to write the book chapter, editorial book. And when you have the one editorial book, then you'll get the offer to write that solo author book. Okay. So it means that there's a continuous process. So at first go to the conference paper, then you can move to the journal paper, then you can move to the editorial book, that what we called it, that the book chapter, then you can move to the solo author book. I suggest you that those at the professor's level do not spend too much time on the Scopus in the journal or Web of Science in the journal. Let's write the book chapter. Let's write the like soul of the book, because the book will be available all over the world. I noticed this one. It's my I think you already know my profile, so I'm moving all over the world. What I said that USA, they never bother the Scopus in their journal or Web of Science in their journal. They always bother about that high impact paper. Means after the publication, how many citations will be there, how many audiences will be there, how many times will you download, and they always check the quality of the journal, and they never ask anybody whether the indexing or not. But our Southeast Asian countries like the Malaysia, Indonesia, this area, our main target that was the Scopus index or Web of Science index. And I always recommend what I said, that if you are the professors, if you could write the book, then how the next generation they will get the benefit. So let us think about the professors level, university faculty member, move to the like our intention to produce the more ideal book, more sought after book, so that our next prospective researcher they can get the new idea from. Okay, so now we are in our main part for today, outline of a journal paper, how you can write a journal paper. And as you target is what I said, that high impact journal paper, it means that Web of Science in a journal paper or Scopus in journal paper. First of all, you have to see this one. When you think that any journal paper, we have to need that this kind of outline. Like title must be there, abstract must be there. There are different sections will be there: introduction, literature review, methodology, model development, presentation of data, data analysis, conclusion, references. I like to remind you again, it is not the necessary that you have to use the all sections, but it's one kind of guideline for you so that you can think. Say, if you have a conceptual model, then section 4 is very important. Model development. If you have a conceptual model, then model development, section 4 is very important. And if you have a model development, then you have to think about evaluation in the next section. So it means that if you have model, then model development, then model evaluation. If you are producing the paper based on the just only secondary data, you are producing the paper based on the secondary data, based on the literature review. In that case, you no need to mention the section 4. Section 4 is not mandatory. And in section 5, you just mention the discussion. I mentioned that you are producing the paper based on the literature review, based on the previous 20 papers, and you like to do the summary or do the literature review. So in that case, you just mention the discussion. Not in the section 4, section 5 will be the discussion. You are producing the one paper based on the survey. You are doing the one survey. You have the 200 papers. If you think that you have only the 200 papers, if you think that now come to the point is that 200 number responded in a sample size, look very carefully. I mentioned only the literature review based on the secondary data. Now I'm talking about the primary data, like survey. Your number was maybe 200, 250, 300. So based on that, you like to write the paper. In that case, the model development section 4 is not required. In that case, section 4 model development is not required. As you have 200, 300 respondent, then section 5 is the presentation of data and data analysis. So now you understand that how you design the paper, it will come the decision earlier whether you have a model or not. If you have a model, one way you have to approach. If you don't have the model, another way you have to approach. Then comes the next question, whether you use a secondary database or the primary database. If the secondary database means the previous papers, previous conference or journal paper, you have to come to the literature review. And then the primary database is survey. If you do the survey, then the primary data, you have to come up with a decision based on the data analysis. Okay, so let us start our discussion. The first of all, the title. If you ask me that how you'll design your title, I would say that your title should be professional, scientific, academic language. I use a few terms here: professional, scientific, academic language. It's very significant that how you can design your title. You know that it is the best option is that at first you have to choose a few titles, 4 to 5 or maximum 6 titles. Then you can rethink about your titles, chosen titles, rethink by yourself. Then you can do the brainstorming with your co-authors, brainstorming with your co-authors. That is the way that how you'll come up with the decision. I just few minutes before I show you the one book, Research Methodology, Contemporary Practices, Guidelines for Academic Researchers. I published this book with my two co-authors. Those are my ex-colleague and ex-student. At first, I still remember when we were choosing the title of this, it took the more than 1 year. At first, we have chosen the few titles, and then we continue the writing the book. And after 1 year, again we come back, again we discuss that which one would be the best one. I would personally recommend you that it is the best option is that you have to spend some time on the brainstorming. Do the brainstorming. This one. So choose a few titles and then do the brainstorming. I suggest you another one thing is that if you use the scientific term like empirical study, exploratory research, embedding, impact analysis. In that case, you know that your title with the scientific research term, the title will be the more flourishable, so that the audiences, when they see the title, they can understand, oh, there is something different. In order to get the idea about the title, I suggest you can go to the conference proceedings. The conference proceedings, they have the suppose the 200 papers or 100 papers, they have a title. So review their title. You can review the title of journal papers. Go to the journal, they have the archive, and you can visit their previous papers, their titles. That is the way that how you can get the idea about the title. I personally request you that you can avoid the name of the organization, name of the country on the title. I noticed that as I'm serving as for a long time as the editor in chief, I'm involved with the lots of channels. So what is my understanding, my observation that I notice sometimes that the authors they're using their organization name, country name, or state name in the title. Say they're doing the one kind of research, and they mention that it's case study on the Johor Bahru state. When you mention the Johor Bahru, yeah, we understood your work in the Johor Bahru, but question is that when you publish this paper, the audiences, if they look at your paper, they'll see, oh, Johor Bahru, that means it's from the Malaysia. There are some people in the developed country like USA, European country, and Canada. They think that no, this is not suitable for us. It's Asian country. So why you are giving the chance for the audiences for that they can understand whether it's Asian country or not? As a researcher, our one of the target, we have to invite them. You have to read our paper. You have to use our citation. You have to use our reference. I personally recommend that no need to write the organization name, country name, state name, the title. You can use it in the inside, abstract, and so on. Another one thing I think recently you can notice that some of them title they are containing the question sign. Some of the title they are containing the question sign. What is that? It means that they are using the research question. They are using the research question as the title. So now come to the next question. I am talking about the like from editor board member point of view, reviewer's point of view. Why you are using your research question as the title? Only one research question you have, or you have the few research questions. If you use the only one research question, no problem. But you are already make the scope very narrow. Why you are making your scope very narrow at the title? You can make it the inside of your paper. I again remind you, if you use that research question, the title is not the wrong. It's absolutely right. But some reviewer they'll ask this question when you review your paper. So you are giving some chance to ask some question regarding your paper. So I personally recommend, if possible, you can avoid the question sign from the title. Okay, now we are in the abstract. If you ask me about the abstract, I always mention that abstract is the glamour of the paper. Abstract is the glamour of the paper. You remember earlier I mentioned that when you review the previous paper, you have to review it for the abstract. It's the glamour of the paper. The glamour, whatever the man, woman, everybody, they love to show their glamour to everyone. It's human nature. So that is the glamour of the paper. So we love to show your paper glamour to everyone. So now comes the question: how will you design the abstract? If I ask the question is that should you design the abstract at first, or you have to design the abstract at last? The answer will be you have to design the abstract at the last. You have to design the abstract at the last. So as you know that you have to finish your full paper, then you have to come to the decision of the your abstract. So what I said that as you'll write the abstract at the last, so I'll discuss the abstract at the last. So now I don't want to describe the abstract. I'll describe the contents of the abstract is very important. It's the glamour of the paper at the last. So today our discussion will be finished by the discussion of the abstract writing. So I don't want to discuss now. You just keep it with me, and we'll discuss this one at the last. Okay, now introduction. Though you notice that I mentioned here introduction, rationale, research objective, significance, scope, and something. So no need to write in this way. First of all, if it's a journal paper, you have to go to their template. You can go to their template. If you go to the template, you can see their format. Use that format. So it is not that necessary to write the rationale, subjective. You can do the paragraph. Or maybe if you use the rational object in this way, then you have to mention 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. I personally suggest it's better just use a paragraph. Why I'm doing this? I'm just for understanding. I'm doing the bold so that you can understand. Okay. The first of all, the rational. Rational means the general background. Basically, the general background. Basically, they're talking about based on your topic, title, your general background, the rational. And then objectives. Basically, when you write the objectives, you just make sure one thing is that you remember in the earlier stage, like childhood time, when you write the objectives, you always mention that I want to do this one to determine, to find, to explore. It's a very old tradition. So now your objective should be the little bit the research term you have to apply, like analyze, explore, investigate, illustrate, demonstrate, or relationship, comparative study, review paper, develop, construct the model. You know that when you write the research paper, there is a one very popular term that is that academic writing. You have to always remember the academic writing is very important. And most of the reviewers like to confirm one thing is that whether you have the vocabulary, strong vocabulary, whether your academic writing is strong or not. It's very important. So when you use this kind of research term, then we understood that is the paper quality. And then go to the next one, the significance. Basically, here you have to mention your topic significance, your study significance. So why you like to do this research, why you like to use this topic, something like that. So you have to mention the significance. And then come to the scope. In order to understand the scope, I always mention that you have to understand that your limitation. Your limitation is the boundary. And if you know your boundary, you understand your scope. So let us think about the limitation, then you have to come to the scope. Your scope will be based on maybe the population, maybe the based on the sample, maybe based on the variables, something like that. And finally, the last paragraph, you have to see the structure of the journal. Means you have to mention in the next few sections will consist of literature review, methodology, discussion, consequently, something like that. So you have to mention the outline of the next sections of your paper. I mentioned earlier, first of all, you have to check the journal template, format of the journal, how many pages they will allow. If there is a page limitation or the words limitation, you have to check it carefully. Based on that, you have to design your paper. And now, that is our components for the introduction. I just remind you again, we are talking about the journal paper, not the PhD dissertation. You know that statement of problems, a research question, hypothesis, objectives, these four are correlated. I can repeat, statement of problems, research question, and objectives. Finally, the hypothesis, these four are correlated. As these four are correlated, so no need to mention all four. So most of the cases in the journal, we are using the objectives only. In the journal, we are just mentioning the objectives. But in the PhD dissertation, you can write down statement of problem, research question, hypothesis, and so on. So as it is journal paper, don't need to mention only just objectives enough. But in the PhD research, you have to mention the clarify the statement of problem, research question, hypothesis. I just remind you again, if there is a PhD scholars, usually when we are the supervisor PhD student, as well as when you are the member of the defense committee, PhD defense committee, we always ask this question: how we can link statement of problem, research question, your objectives and hypothesis. So it's very important. You have to remember that you have to link up. And then in the journal, we just use only one objectives. Okay, now we are moving to the literature review. You understand the literature review is mean the review. It means there's a review. Literature review, related works. And how you can present a literature review. I think I remember I mentioned earlier, even based on the secondary data, you can publish the paper. And I heard from the many scholars that if anybody publish the literature review paper, this is not the good paper. It depends on you how you will present a literature review. Today, I'll give you some tips. I suggest you can apply these tips, like a theory, related review literature, previous term. Did you notice there is a one triangle here? I think you
Yes.
notice there's a triangle.
Mhm.
And this is a triangle. I'm so sorry, the color is not very visible. 1, 2, 3, and this opposite direction. I'm so sorry. So this number is comes from here. The three represent the theory, two represent the related review literature, and one represents the previous study. So you have to design the literature review in this way: the theory, a related review literature, and previous study. And if you ask me what is your position, what is your research work? Your research work is in the vertex. Your research area, your research topics is in the vertex. So you have to highlight how you are designing the 3, 2, 1, and then come to your own research. So it means that at first you have to start with very broad perspectives, then you have to make them more narrow and come to your own topics. If you reflect literature review in this way, that is the best literature review. I like to provide the one example so that you can understand how you'll design the literature review. The first one, the theory. Say you like to do the research on supply chain management in the hospital. Hospital supply chain management. Your research area, supply chain management in the hospital. I think you know that hospital is the service industry. So that first, the theory, you have to mention definition of supply chain management. What is supply chain management? So that is the theory. So that any reader they can understand, oh, that is supply chain management. So first of all, you have to mention that definition of supply chain management, theory of supply chain management. Theory, first of all. The secondly, related review literature, you have to mention supply chain management in the service industry. Supply chain management in the service industry. Why you are pushing the service industry? Because hospital is representing the service industry. find out is that in research work, supply chain management service industry, educational supply chain management, or maybe the tourism supply chain management, banking industry supply chain management. That means you target supply chain management in the service industry, whether it's available or not. Then you have to come back to the previous study. Previous study, do you remember the number one? Any specific research of supply chain management in the hospital? Any specific research on supply chain management in the hospital? And finally, after the exploration, you got it, the two papers. One is that supply chain management in the private hospital in the Nigeria. So this is Africanism. Supply chain management in the private hospital in the Nigeria. You got the another paper, supply chain management in the public hospital in the Chennai, India. You got the another paper, supply chain management in the public hospital in Chennai, India region. So you got the two paper, one from the Nigeria, means Africa region, India, that means subcontinent. And now you have to measure the previous study. Previous study, you have to measure their findings, their model, something like that, if they have. And now come to the question then why you are designing your research work. Look very carefully. That is what I said, the private hospital in Nigeria, case study. And what I said for India, there's a public hospital in the Chennai, India. Also case study. How about your research works? You like to design that supply chain management in the hospital, not specific to any country, not specific to the public or private hospital. Any hospital they can apply. So that means you like to design the supply chain management model for the hospital that could be applicable to any country, any hospital they can apply. So by producing this way the literature review, you can show the significance of your study. It will be helpful for you to come up with the decision that how you are designing your literature, why you are working on the supply chain management in the hospital. Now, come to the next question. You know that the most of the cases, as you are taking the literature, you're taking the part from the previous researcher or the other papers, other citations you're using. There's a possibility of the plagiarism. I think you're familiar with the plagiarism. And you know that we are using different software like the Turnitin software or other software, and we'd like to find out the similarity index. It's very important in the ethics in research. And you know that similarity index, the cutoff point, it depends. If you think that like journal, we would say that we are allowing the 20 to 30%. It depends on the journal editor-in-chief or publishing. And for the conference, we can accept 35 to 40%. But for the PhD research, we are accepting the below 20%. Below 20%. So now you understand this one. That there is another problem. That when you're designing the literature review based on the previous papers, there's a possibility similarity index will be very high. You know, it's very interesting thing is that we always mention one thing that if your similarity index is very high, it is possible you can reduce the similarity index. It's possible you can reduce the similarity index. How is it possible? I'll give you some tips. You can apply this one. The first of all, you see, you can use the at first you'll copy and paste, right? Okay, do the copy and paste. Then you can change the word. You can apply the synonyms or thesaurus to change the word. I suggest you to apply the thesaurus rather than synonyms. And secondly, you are taking some part from the previous paper. They are writing in terms of present tense. You can convert in terms of past tense. They are using that active voice. You have to convert to the passive voice. Already you are changing. And the last option is a rewrite. We call it the paraphrasing. Read the whole paragraph and you have to rewrite your own word. Read the whole paragraph and you can write your own word. We call it paraphrasing. It's the best option. But you know, the paraphrasing is not very easy. I know that many professors, they couldn't write the one paragraph. So it means that it is another way that how you can improve your writing. So that is the way that how you can reduce the similar index. So I like to request those today I give you some tips how you can write the literature review and try to follow this one. And by this one, you can show the significance of literature review. Methodology parts. Mr. Sharif, if you don't mind, may I know the how long time I have now?
It's as much as you need. We are open
Oh, that's
because
fine. That's
there
fine.
is a
Thank you so much.
very good audience response. They are
Okay.
observing your sessions. Lot of questions
Okay.
from around the world, so you can
Yeah.
continue.
My
Yes,
pleasure. My pleasure. Because I like to give some space for the audiences to ask me some question as well.
yes.
Okay. Methodology. You know that if you ask me about methodology, I would say that it is the heart. You understand? It's the heart of the journal paper. So when you design your methodology, you have to make sure that how you're designing a methodology. First of all, you have to mention the methods of research you are using. So you first of all you have to mention the expert research, descriptive research, or causal research. And then you remember earlier I mentioned a little bit about this one. And then you have to mention, if possible, quality quantity research. And it will be better if possible. You have to mention more specific that whether you are applying that primary data, secondary data, you have to mention. If it is a primary data survey based, you have to mention expert research. Research hypothesis. Basically, you know that I delivered this kind of lecture anywhere in the world, and sometimes I'm spending the few days lecture, means 2 days lecture from day to suppose the 5 hours to 6 hours per day. So in details discussion. Unfortunately, this is the very short discussion, so you cannot go to the all topics. But I just remind you again, hypothesis is very significant. You just remember, if you design your hypothesis, that means you have to do many things. So now come to the question is that if your hypothesis, then you have to think the hypothesis testing. If you don't have the hypothesis, no testing at all. And if you ask me, sir, how I can design the hypothesis will come up with the research question. Make it very simple. Do you remember earlier I mentioned statement of problems? Then I mentioned that research question, then objectives and hypothesis are correlated. So your hypothesis will come up with this question. Basically, there are two types of hypothesis. One is a null hypothesis, another is alternate hypothesis. Then you have to think the whether the one tail test or two tail test. I don't want to discuss the hypothesis at this moment, but you just remember there's a way to design the hypothesis. Operationalization of variables. So if you have a model, you have the conceptual model, then there's a dependent independent variable. So then you have to mention about the dependent independent variable, and as well as you have to mention operational component. Operational component means a research instrument. Your research instrument means you serve a questionnaire. Whether you apply the 5-point Likert scale, 7-point Likert scale, simple attitude scale, you have to mention. If possible, you can mention about the measurement scale, if possible. And then sample size determination. How you determine your sample size, you have to mention clearly. Whether you are applying the formula, whether you are applying the table, whether you are applying the reference. What I say that you have to mention clearly that how you are determining the sample size. Is it a formula based on formula or table or reference? You know, formula, there is a two formula, one for known and unknown population. And for the table, there are a few tables, but among of them, Taro table is very popular. And if you ask me that among these three, which are the best to determine sample size, I would say the reference. And PhD level can apply the reference. But most of the people, most of the researchers, they prefer to use a table because table is very easy to identify. So I just show you the one example from the Taro table so that you can understand. Basically, you see in the Tarawih table, there is one restriction is that you can apply this table only for the known population. Population will be must be known. Look very carefully. Say your population the 5,000, and now you're using the sample size. Now you're using the sample size. You like to find a sample size. Your range of error, the 3%, 5%, 7%, 10%. If you use the 3%, then you need the sample size 909. With the 5%, 370, and then 7%, 196, and 10%, 98. sample size determination. And what is the advantage of this tablet? Look very carefully. So suddenly you are doing the research and your number respond in the 101. The reviewer they can ask you, do you think that your number of sample size, your sample determination is appropriate to come up with a decision? Then how will you explain? Go to this table. You can say, according to the Darwin table, if we use the 10% range of error, then our sample size will be the 98. We are using 101. Finish. And now the same research, and your sample size say 200. And somebody then asks you, are you sure that 200 respondents are sufficient to come up with a decision? Then you can just mention, if you use the 7% range of error, according to the Darwin table, we need the 196 respondents. So you're taking the 200 respondents. That's fine, no problem. Among this all, 5% range of error is the most popular. Okay, so mostly applicable. So I suggest you that you can keep this table with you. You can get some explanation from there. This would be helpful for you, for the researcher. Okay. Then sampling procedures. Basically, here you have to mention whether you are applying the probability sample or non-probability sample. So I suggest you that make sure that is very important. Recently, I received one PhD dissertation from on a public university of Malaysia for the review, and I'm so surprised to see that the student they mentioned the probability sampling, but inside he or she mentioned that convenience sampling. Probability sampling is a known population. Convenience sampling, but not probability sampling. You understand contradictory? It's very common problem. I suggest you when you write the research, journal paper, research paper, you have to make sure that you understood the probability sampling, non-probability sampling, known population, unknown population. Then you have to think under the probability sampling there are few subcategories, under the non-probability sampling there are few subcategories. Then you have to decide. If you are not confirmed, I suggest you leave it. But you have to mention those probability sampling, non-probability sampling if you are confirmed about the sampling procedure. I don't want to talk about the example at this stage. We have a time constraint. So what we said earlier, data collection, you have to mention whether the primary data and secondary data, you have to mention clearly. And I suggest you use the primary data, that is the PhD research, then you have to take the number of respondents, 400 plus is standard one. Why the 400 plus? There is some explanation as well. If it is secondary data, you have to mention clearly from where you are collecting secondary data. So that's the part of the methodology. Now, we are moving to the next section, model development, theory development. You know that if you have a conceptual model, then it's a very important part. So first of all, you have to decide whether you have the conceptual model or not. If you have the conceptual model, then you have to give the concentration on that model development. So that means you have to mention this one. Now, if you like to show your model, conceptual model, your model, definitely you have to show theoretical model. Theoretical model, theoretical framework means your own work, your previous works. And then conceptual model is your own work. So make it very simple, make it separate. At first, you have to design the theoretical frameworks, theoretical models, it will come from the previous research. Then secondly, you have to design your own work, your own model, conceptual framework. I give you the two examples so that you can think. Do you remember earlier I mentioned supply chain management in the hospital? And that time I mentioned you got the two research papers. One is supply chain management in the private hospital in Nigeria. Another is the supply chain management in the public hospital in the Chennai. Both you have the two model. One is coming from the suppose from the Nigeria, another is coming from the suppose from the India. So there is a theoretical framework. That is the theoretical framework. And then conceptual model, what I said that now you like to design supply chain management model for the hospital. It could be applicable for any hospital, what are the public or private hospital. That could be applicable for the any country they can apply. So you understand you are starting from the theoretical framework and you are moving to the like the conceptual model. And now I'd like to give another example. You know that suppose you like to develop a new model, supply chain management model in the education institutions. So education supply chain management model. Okay, now theoretical framework. You know that during my PhD time, I developed the one model, ITESCM model. If you are the audiences, if you are interested, I like to request you can go to the Google and you can write down the model name. The name of the model ITESCM, Integrated Tertiary Educational Supply Chain Management Model. I developed this model 2009 during my PhD time with my supervisor. That was applicable for the tertiary education institutions. And now, after developing my model, and then from 2010 to onward, the many researchers, different countries from India, Pakistan, then Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, and then UK, Turkey, USA, they did some of the research based on the ITESC model. And that is very interesting thing is that, as I mentioned earlier, that I have PhD students. So one of my PhD students, he already finished his PhD from Malaysia based on this model. Look very carefully. I developed the ITSC model based on the previous theoretical frameworks. So now ITSC model is that conceptual model in 2009. My PhD student, he developed the model, the Sustainable Educational Supply Chain Management Model for the Malaysian University. Sustainable Educational Supply Chain Management Model for the Malaysian Universities. And he used ITESC model as a theoretical framework. So now ITESC model is a theoretical framework. What I said that my student in 2018 he developed that sustainable education supply chain management model for the Malaysian University. That is a new conceptual model. So did you notice there's some link up? There is a link up theoretical framework, theoretical model to conceptual conceptual framework. That is the way that how we can contribute for the prospective researcher. You know, if I ask you that why you are writing the paper, if I ask you why you are writing the paper, somebody they'll say they're writing the paper for the incentive. Somebody they'll say they're writing the paper for the PhD completion. Somebody they'll say they write the paper for the promotion. I would say that all are the absolutely wrong. We are doing the research for the prospective researcher. We are doing the research for the contributing the society. So that is your first and outmost you target how you can add values to society. And you just remember when you're doing the research, that is the starting of your research. Who knows the destination will be, nobody knows the destination of your research. Continuous subsequent research will be there. You know, I always mention that when you do the research, you have to remember this one. You are doing the research for the future, not for the present time. So you have to work on that way. Okay, so we have done this part. So what I said that at first you have to design the theoretical framework based on the previous works, previous research. Then based on that you have to design the conceptual model, conceptual framework. Conceptual model means your own work. This is your own innovation and creativity. Okay, now we are in the data analysis and discussion part. Basically, data analysis. Here you have to discuss your statistical treatment of data, like or which one you are applying. I would recommend at this moment is best one. If possible, you can apply the structural equation modeling. The structural equation modeling, SAM technique, and you can use a different software like MOS, Ristrel, PLS, something like that. Whatever you are applying does not matter. Matter is that you have to apply the structural equation modeling. You know, if you apply the Excel and SQL, I would say the value is old, obsolete. And I can remind you, you're not doing the PhD for yourself, you're doing the PhD for future. So if you apply the structural model in PhD research, you can apply this on next 20 years. And this is our target, how we can enrich that our PhD research. There are two types of analysis. One is the descriptive analysis and the inferential analysis. Basically, that I think you know that descriptive analysis means frequency, arithmetic means standard deviation, and inferential analysis means hypothesis testing. So it means that, as you know earlier, your hypothesis will come up on this question. So if you have research question, that means you can think of the hypothesis. If you have a hypothesis, then you have to prove the hypothesis. And that's why you need the inferential analysis. Make it very simple. So you can get the earlier that if you have a hypothesis, then you have to think that the inferential analysis. You can apply the null hypothesis, alternate hypothesis. You can apply the structural equation modeling. If you ask me why the structural equation modeling, SAM technique is very popular because SAM technique includes general linear model as well as common factor analysis. So that is all together in the one platform. That's why structural equation modeling is very popular nowadays. I do not want to spend more time here. Now we are in the conclusion part. What is the components of the conclusion? I would like to recommend that conclusion is very important. Do you remember earlier I said when you review the paper, you have to check abstract, then conclusion. Then you have to see whether they have any findings, any other some recommendation for the study. So now it's a time you have to design your own conclusion. You have to design your own conclusion. So I like to request at first you have to mention the findings, summary of findings. It will come up from your research question or hypothesis in brief. And you remember when you write the conclusion, all conclusion will be the academic language, no statistical language. If I say Mr. X has a good relation with Mr. Y at 0.001 significant level two-tailed test, at 0.001 significant level two-tailed test, it is statistical language. You can understand, you have a statistical knowledge. But those don't have the statistical knowledge, how they will understand? So you can write in this way. You have to write a very simple way in the conclusion. Mr. X is a good relation, Mr. Y. Then you can understand. You have to mention recommendation. If possible, if you have a model, I suggest that you can mention specifically. This is the recommendation for the industry, this is a recommendation for the academics, something like that. Specific recommendation. If possible, the best option is the real life application, means industry application. If possible, you can discuss in the recommendation part. Then your conclusion will be very high level of conclusion. Further study. Is there any further study? And now you can ask me, sir, I could understand that how we can get the further study. Very simple. You always think your limitation. Your limitation is a further study for the prospect research. And I again remind you, there is no perfection in the research. And if anybody mentions this is the best research, this is the best quality paper, something wrong. It's a continuous process. So you have to think the further study. And how is the further study? You have to go back to your limitation. If you have a limitation, then you can think, oh, this is not my limitation. Or why not you can recommend for further study? You remember that you further study the starting point of the prospect researcher. So when you design your conclusion, you have to design the conclusion that way. There should be the further study so that the other people they can understand that how we can go to write the next research, how we can write the next research paper. Okay. Okay, now references. You know that in the references, there is a few types of references: API style, number reference style. There is Harvard style, Vancouver style, lots of things. You can apply, anyone you can apply. But I suggest you personally, you can do one thing. You can check the journal template. You can check the journal template, journal format, that which reference style they're using. So you have to apply their reference style. If they use the API style, okay, API style. If the number reference style, number reference style, no problem. And as you know that you have to use the two things, the text citation and reference citation. Text citation and reference citation. Okay. I just remind you again that you have to make sure that text citation and reference citation should be the synchronized. Okay. And what type of reference you have to choose? So you have to choose that like a book chapter, journal, conference proceedings. If you use a conference proceeding, you have to confirm they should have the ISBN number. We strongly discourage to use that website address. We strongly discourage to apply the website address. If it is a better option, it is the better if you could avoid the website address, if possible. But sometimes it's not possible, you can apply. It's no problem. But if you apply the website address, then you have to mention date of browsing. If you use a website address, that in that case you have to mention date of browsing, because some of the site website always changing. Okay, and I like to remind you one issue is that you know that the reviewer, say Scopus in the journal, editor-in-chief, editor board member, reviewer, or Web of Science in the journal, the editor board member. Usually they do not want to review the full paper at first. They like to go for review step by step. First of all, they will review your abstract. It is a good abstract, good academic writing. Then they'll go to the conclusion. The conclusion, you have findings, you have a limitation, further study is a good conclusion. Then they will check the references. It's very interesting thing is that reviewer, every board member, they'll check your references from where you are collecting your information, from where you are collecting your text. When they notice that you are using the references, you have the book chapter, book, journal, they understood it's a good research paper. If they notice that your most of the references from the conference website, only just few, 5 to 10, then they understood this paper is not the quality paper. And then they do not feel the too much interest to go to the inside of the paper. So it means that I like to share the tricky process you can apply in future. You have to make sure that your references should be enriched. Because you know that you have some link, literature review and reference, there's some link. Your literature review will come up with the references, right? So if you want a few references, only few literature review. So that's why it's the best option is that you have to ensure that more references must be there. So what is the standard? Usually we assume that 20 plus is standard for one journal paper. 20 plus references must be there. Okay, so you're in the last part for today, abstract. Do you recall that I started the abstract at first and I mentioned I'll discuss the abstract the last. And what I use the term, do you remember the glamour? Abstract is the glamour of the paper. So now come to the question, how we design our glamour? How we design the glamour of the paper? First of all, you have to use the professional academic language. You have to check the number of words limitation from the template, usually 100 to 300 words. And I would say the academic writing is very important. You know, today we don't have enough time, but in future, if you, Mr. Sharif and their organizer, if they arrange any kind of workshop, like the day-long workshop, then we can discuss this academic writing. And you know, usually I spend more time on academic writing, and I always show some of the papers as a sample, like sample of conference paper, journal paper, book chapter, books, how they can write. So that time I always discuss academic writing because you know that academic writing, if you strong academic writing, there is a possibility paper will be accepted. If you ask me that the professor, when the paper, there is a possibility to accept the paper. The first option, if you have a conceptual model, there is a possibility your paper will be accepted. The second option, if you have a number of respondents, you are doing a survey, your number of respondents more than 300 plus, there is a possibility paper must be accepted. Third option, if your academic writing are very rich, there is a possibility paper will be accepted. So these are three basic criteria that to accept the paper. You know, even the literature review paper is also accepted due to the academic writing. So that's why you have to give the more concentration on the academic writing. So not today, but in future, I'll show you some sample paper if you get the chance, so that you can see that how you can write the academic writing. Okay, so now you have to mention the rationale only one sentence, very in brief, only one sentence rationale, general background. It will come from the topics or title. Your main objective, only one sentence. You have to use a term like represent, demonstrate, illustrate, encompass typics, highlight, conceptual model, literature review, something like that. You have to mention in brief that what type of study you are doing, like descriptive, causal research, or descriptive or exploratory research, qualitative or quantitative research, something like that. It is not the necessary you have to mention everything, like basic research, exploratory research, quantitative research. No need to mention anyone. At least one you have to mention. You can understand what type of study or what type of research you are using. Type of data, you have to mention clearly the type of data, whether you are applying the primary data or secondary, you have to mention clearly. Sample, if your sample size 200 plus, then you can write down in the abstract number of respondents. If your sample size below 200, I suggest you don't need to write in the abstract. You can write the number responding in the inside the paper, like the so introduction letter. So what I say that if your number responded more than 200 plus, then you can write in you can mention the abstract. If it is below 200, I suggest you don't need to write in the abstract. Sampling procedure, whether you apply the probability sampling, non-probability sampling, you have to clearly mention. But again, I remind you there is some question. Probability sampling, known population, non-probability sampling, unknown population, you have to understand and which category you have to use. If you have some confusion, I suggest you don't need to write in the abstract. Leave it. Statistical tools, you have to, if you apply the structural regression model, you have to mention clearly you apply the structural regression model. We have to mention the technique. Don't write the software name. Do not write the software name. Say, if you mention that you are using the SPS, you are using the MOS lister. The question will be there: why you are using the MOS? Why not the lister? Why not the PLS? So it's better no need to mention the software name there. Software name you have to mention inside of the paper. Findings of the study, main findings of the study. You have to mention the main findings of the study. Okay. And now come to our most important part, that is the novelties and contribution of your paper. You know that when you review the paper, we always ask this question. Your contribution is clear. Please define your contribution clearly. Please mention the novelties of your paper. You have to mention clearly about the novelties and contribution of the paper. You know that even that during the PhD time, when we are involved with the PhD defense, at that time, during the PhD defense time, Viva time, we always ask this type of question. What is the contribution of your PhD research? And I was so surprised that, sometimes the most of the students, they couldn't reply. They try to say many things, but they do not come to the contribution. And you remember earlier I mentioned, you are not doing the research for yourself. You are doing the research for the future, the betterment of the society. So you have to express how you can contribute to the society, how you can add the values to the society. So you can express your contribution in terms of academics, in terms of research. You can express your contribution in terms of industry, in terms of the practitioners, real life application. You can express your contribution in terms of society contribution. I said the three things. You can express your contribution in terms of academics or researcher. You can express your contribution in terms of industry, practitioners, real life application. You can express your contribution in terms of society contribution. I like to remind you again is that you just remember one thing. When you do write the paper, it is the most vital part. So you have to write down. Say you are doing the research on the green supply chain management. You are doing the research on green HRM. You are doing the research on the population. Green supply chain management, green HRM, population, all other contribute to the society directly. Society contribution. You are developing the one model. Now you can mention how this model will be applicable in the real life application. How this model could be applicable in the industry. Industry contribution. Real life application contribution. Is a contribution towards the practitioners. And finally, you know that whatever you do in the research, it may be the research on the
Dear audience, I think he has some problem with internet. Uh, so hopefully he gonna join with us soon. And there are many questions from audience. Many questions from audience. I really want to thanks audience for joining today's sessions. Because this session is very important. Those who are engaged with research organizations, government, policy makings, And most important thing is that those who want to finish your PhD, so this kind of questions and other things is very important. I hope that uh, our guest, honorable guest, going to join with us soon. And there are more questions. I just want to take the questions. Hopefully when our guest come, he gonna answer these things. And first things, Abiyaz Mustain, thank you sir for a nice presentation. What the role and impact of research, instrumentations, laboratory and environment uh, availability and fund on the quality of the research in the context of Bangladesh. There is another question, Shahinul Islam. Hello, sir. Would you tell us what is the difference between uh, novelty and other things? Sir, can you please add your presentations?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Or okay, okay, okay.
yeah, yeah. I'm so sorry. I think there's something problem at my end.
Uh, Internet issue, sir.
Now it is very common issue.
Yes. Yes, we
Look,
understand. So there is everything is remote. So many things possibles. Even actually, there are many audience. Audience has actually huge questions. So do you
no
have
problem, no
time?
problem.
We
We are
have
coming. I'm
very
coming.
very like because World Talent Economy Forum, we are connected around 122 countries around the world. So
Can you
many
see my
people.
slide?
Yes, I can add. So there are actually many audience questions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So let me finish the another few sentence about this one. I think you are already. I'm discussing about the contribution novelties, right?
exactly.
Yeah. You know, what I said that you can express your contribution novelty in terms of three ways. What is that? For academics or researcher, and contribution towards the society, and contribution towards the practitioners, real life application. Now, say you are doing the one research based on the literature review, just literature review, secondary data. So, what is your contribution? So, you understand there is no connectivity with the industry, there is no connectivity with society as well. So, how you can add the, you can mention your contribution. Look very careful how I am expressing. You see, you can mention this study based on the secondary data, though it is a limitation. However, this study would unlock the further frontiers for the prospective researchers in that area. Did you notice how I express? First of
Yes.
all, I mentioned the limitation. I convert the limitation in terms of opportunity. And then I mentioned the contribution to the prospective researcher. I can repeat. This study based on the second data. However, this is the limitation. But we can open the door. It would unlock the further frontiers for the prospective researchers to pursue their research in that area. So that is the way that even if you could not get any kind of contribution, you have to mention the research contribution, academic contribution. Okay. Okay. Finally, your keywords. I mentioned here the keywords is very important in the sense when anybody search in the Google, they will use your keywords. Okay. So when you use select your keywords, you have to make sure that it should be selected based on your papers. So when anybody search in the Google, they use some keyword. If it is a match with you, that your paper will be there. So you have to be more concerned about the searching the keywords. Okay. Okay. So that's all from my side. Now I like to open the floor for you. So if you have
Mhm.
any question, you can ask me. Please carry on.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. This is actually very good sessions, and especially how you explain about this research part and how step by step researcher can develop their paper. This is very important for our audience. Even though we are connected as much as possible around the world, even professors from MIT, from Stanford, from Harvard, University of Malaya, even including you are from independent university. This is one of the prestigious university from Bangladesh. So many of the prestigious university from around the world, they are joining. And I believe that our audience really like your session, really, because there is a huge questions and other things. Maybe it's relevant, maybe it's not relevant, but hopefully you can help us because they love to learn from you. This is important for World Talent Economy Forum. Sir, first thing first, I from my side, I just want to know how actually the researchers, I think there are many audience, those who are doing research and those who are engaged with research in different countries. So how researcher can publish their papers in high impact journals, and you are from editorial boards and you have a lot of experience and engagement with different journals. So just if
Thank
you
you
if you
so
help
much.
them to understand.
Thank you so much. First of all, I like to request that you know that your impact depends on your how many people they will review your paper, how many people they download your paper, how many people they will use your references. So the best option is that always remember what I said there. When you write the paper, the few something, basic something. Whether you have the conceptual model, when you design the one paper based on the model, it means that this paper demand in the market very high because people they are learning from your model. If you have any kind of survey more than 200 plus, the demand is very high. People now think then how they can add values based on your survey. And third one, you know, if you do the literature review, even the literature review, you are taking the suppose the references more than 20, 25. I know that there are some literature review where they are selecting that 50 paper based on 50 papers. So you just think you are summarize the 50 papers. You are working on the basis of 50 papers. So the audiences they do not want to read the 50 papers again. They would like to review your paper as a literature review. I just give you one example. You know, one of my book chapter, it is the like supply chain management theory and evolution that is published in 2011. It is the Web of Science Index. And now recently I noticed the number of 21,000 times downloaded. 21,000 times downloaded. And you know, we have a statistics and we notice that most of the download people from the US. And then you look very carefully, USA, they are too much depend on this way, that high impact something. And that is the supply chain management theory and evolution. And nowadays, if anybody would like to do the research on supply chain management, they like to start by that one. And there is something, but there is a literature review. So what I said, if you think that you have a literature review, it's not a good paper. No, no. It could be the good paper. But another one thing you have to ensure this one, in order to make sure that high impact, your academic writing will be very strong. So that they can understand, they can use your citation or something because a strong academic writing is there. So there are a few criteria I mentioned how you can produce a high impact journal paper. But I can remind you that if you could not produce a high impact journal paper, it not means that it is not a good paper. It will take time. You have to spend more time on the writing the paper. Okay? Thank you. Next
Thank
question,
you.
please.
Thank you. There are actually many questions, and they really want to give you thanks. Humaira Tanzila, I just share their thoughts and
Yeah,
views.
please, please, please.
Yes, yes. Humaira Tanzila, she said, "Hello, sir. Thank you for your time and sharing important thoughts. We feel honored for your presence." Uh, Noor Fazrin, good morning, sir. It is surely a great discussion. We see that some PhD students are puzzled to come up with a solution. What is your suggestion for them to reach the conclusion? Thank you. Onika Shams also send you greetings. There are more questions. Uh, I want to hear from you about these things. How do you want to guide some of the researcher, those who engage with PhD program? I think many PhD students also observing this session.
Yeah. I personally, I request Mr. Sharif, if possible, you can arrange the another one session for the PhD students only. So you can
Okay.
discuss the PhD dissertation because they have to know the many things. When you supervise the PhD student, we understood this one very carefully that they have to need it. There's one question what I noticed earlier. They mentioned how they'll come up with solution. You
Mhm.
remember I mentioned earlier that when you design your statement of problems, statement of problem, and then research question, then objectives, hypothesis, then methodology, and finally the findings. Six will be the one Excel sheet. So that you see your research statement of problem, first problem, You have the findings. Second statement of problem, second finding. Third statement of problem, third finding. That's why you always mention when you do the PhD, reduce the statement of problems, the more specific problems. Reduce the number of research questions, more specific research questions. Reduce the number of hypotheses, more specific hypotheses. Because there's all of the interconnected. What I say, the six things in the one Excel sheet. And that's the way that how you'll come up with the PhD findings. So I'd like to request, Mr. If possible, that you can arrange the one
Definitely,
session.
definitely,
Yeah,
definitely.
please,
For
please,
your special sessions, definitely we're gonna arrange for from World Talent Economy Forum. Actually, today there are more questions from audience.
please, please, please.
Onika Shams, greetings, sir. What are the techniques to impress the readers?
I think
Uh,
I already explained it.
yes,
I
yes, yes,
already
yes,
explained
yes,
it.
yes. Noor Fazrin, what are the reason the researcher are getting lower payment compared to other professionals? Okay.
It's a good question. Good
And
question.
one thing, Mehruz Jahan, what is the process of publishing papers? Okay,
I think we
yes,
already explained it.
yes, yes.
Okay, so you are talking about the honorarium. If you look by profile, if you ask me how many publication, I'm not sure the exact number at this moment because the 2 days before one of my paper published in the Web of Science Index journal, but even I could not visit that one. But one of my students is just sent to me yesterday. So you know that whatever number of publication, somebody they're thinking that we are getting the honorarium by the publication. No, nothing, nothing. And see, I think I have the books, more than 20 books I have already published. So now if you ask me, sir, you are getting the royalty from the books, I said, no, nothing. We are the contributing to the society.
Mhm.
You see that academic people, when you are the academic side, you're writing the research, you never think that the money will be there. You know that even when if you see my CV properly, before the 2010, any kind of conference, I have used my own money. After the 2010, when I'm in there, like after the PhD holder, I'm getting the position. Then is changing the environment. Nowadays, when anybody invite me for a conference, the keynote speaker, I think you know that I already delivered the lecture, the keynote speaker, more than 50 international conference. So nowadays, so when I join any international conference, they're giving the honorarium, they're giving the 5-star hotel, they're giving the air ticket, everything. But it will take time to come up that level. But I
Mhm.
always mentioned that initially I invested the money for the research area, and don't
Yes.
don't expect the return from there. It is automatic. Sometimes when I deliver the lecture, this kind of workshop, we are getting the honorarium, the suppose $500, $1,000. But even sometimes we are doing this as free of cost because we
Mhm.
have to contribute to the society. So what I said that don't expect the money will come up in the every aspect in the research, every aspect of academics, because we are
Mhm.
the academics. We are our main target how we can produce that well-being of the society by producing these outcomes. So that is our
Mhm.
target. Okay. Thank you.
Excellent, sir. Excellent, sir. Sir, one point I just want to add because you can check our World Talent Economy Forum's YouTube channels and our Facebook video. We are actually connecting with Silicon Valleys to many, many corporations. They have one things, and academia has one thing. Let's say, academia from University of Malaya, we get recorded that only 19% of their research actually contributing in the industry. 81% of their research they cannot contribute in the industry. This is one point. On the other hand, from Silicon Valleys to all of the big corporations, we find that uh, they want industrial research, more on industrial research. They want more on product innovations. They want more on something unique. Yes, definitely. The COVID period, actually, researchers come up with the solution as a vaccine. How we can minimize the gap? This is actually ultimately
Good
objective of.
question.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, very good question. I just share with you so they can understand. Those are audience here. I like to request you just search in the Google ICBM 2017, ICBM 2019. I lead the two international conference in our country, Bangladesh, and there is we keep the part of the academic industry discussion. It's very important academic and industry collaboration. What the Silicon Valley, what they are looking for us, that is the perfect, and that is the ultimate target. That if the academic they could not contribute to the industry, that is the no outcome. So our ultimate goal, the whatever the research will be there, the research should be contributing to the academics from the industry. So that
Mhm.
is our what we call it. We have to transfer the knowledge disseminated from the academics to the industry, how they'll apply this one. And today I mentioned this one many times, how we can apply in the industry. You know that we always doing some research work in industry, but industry they have to also ask their demand to us,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
that's why we need some of the like the organization like the World Economic Forum is one good initiative. So they have to do this link up. They have to communicate with the industry, look the industry demand, and they have to approach the academics, and then they will work as a benchmarking between these two group of people.
Mhm.
I just remind you one thing is that suppose that COVID-19 time, at this moment, I'm involved with a few research works in the COVID-19, like supply chain management, impact of supply chain management due to the COVID-19 in the different industry. And most of the research, as I'm involved in the University of Texas, Arlington, so there is research in the west of the USA. So we are trying to do this one. That research should be applicable in the other country, and then how the industry they are getting that challenges due to COVID-19 global supply chain impact, how they could recover that challenges. And I think I have some lecture on this on supply global supply chain management due to the COVID-19. I think Sharif, if you organize any kind of seminar on the supply chain management, I can also share with this one. That is very helpful for the industry.
Mhm.
They would
Mhm.
like to get that kind of research works. But
Mhm.
what I said that it will take time because all academics they are not the like that kind of researcher that they can think how they can apply their own findings in the industry level. But I believe it's possible, and that is something we can work together, and we need this kind of platform so that they can come up forward and they can do this benchmarking between the industry research with the like academics people. Thank you.
Mhm. Mhm. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. There are more questions from audience. I just want to take from them. Mohammed Sohail Rana, definitely it will be very helpful for us when you give them the presentation. BT Sultana, sir, how can we identify a research problem? And another question, Araf Mehraj, hello, sir. To measure social innovation intent among students, what is the right questionnaires and research methodology to publish a quality research work?
Thank you. Thank you so much. You know, you're asking that how can you get the problem. Uh, in order to get the research problem, the best option is that you have to review the previous papers. You know, I always mention my PhD scholars that when they come to my office the first day, now your next job, you have to review the papers. And if they ask me my target, I say 1,000 papers.
Mhm.
And after that, I noticed that the PhD scholar, they never come to my office next few months. Then
Mhm.
again, I call them after 2 or 3 months. And I asked them, how many papers did you search? They said the only 100. That's fine. Let us start. So read the 100 papers, try to find out their problem, try to find out their gaps, try to find out their further study. From there, you can get your research gap, your research problem.
Mhm.
So your research problem will come up from the previous papers. If you couldn't review the previous paper, how you can get your research problem? So your research gap will come from there. Your
Mhm.
research problem will come from there. So you have to read this one properly. So, is it okay, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
There are more questions I want to take. I know that you spend a lot of time, and definitely in the futures, if you have very good plan.
I'd like to request you that we can take down a few other question. I have another
I
today's
understand. I
PhD
understand.
discussion after 15 minutes, so you can take another 5 to 10 minutes maximum,
Okay,
please.
okay, okay. There is another question. Araf Mehraz. Hello, sir. What is your opinion about Access Journal? And another questions from Azizur Rahman. Good morning, sir. Quality research or publication is high impact journal. What's important?
Thank you so much. You know, Open Access Journal. If you ask me my opinion, I would say that excellent. And you know that I have a publication in the traditional publication like Amazon. You can see if you go to the Amazon, you can write down my name. There are lots of publication, and I have also open access publication. But Amazon, when they search, if you search my books, you have to purchase. But it's not very easy for everyone to purchase the books. Young scholar, developing country, they cannot do this one. They are not that kind of mood that they have to purchase the books. They have to purchase the journal paper. Open access is a free access for the any generation. Personally, the young scholar, the developing country researcher, they do not want to spend the money for the research. So that is the open access journal is the best for them. So as what I say, as a researcher, it's our responsibility to contribute to the young scholar, so that how they can search the paper, they can download the paper, they can use the paper. So definitely, open access journal is the best for them. Yes. Now, if you ask me the quality, that is another discussion. But is a quality computer that it will take some time. Intech, this is a leading OpenX in the world. So when they started their journey in 2004, I think I have one interview with the Intech, and that is available in the website as well. So they also asked this question that which one I prefer personally, open access or traditional access. I prefer open access because the lots of audiences they can read your papers, the lots of people they can see your paper, and if they use your paper as citation, your impact will be high. So that high impact journal paper will be there. So you have to give this chance to them. And what is the intake? When they started their journey, they could not get the cooperation from the librarian. Most of the librarians they are against the open access journal. And then 2009, intake they got the index in the Web of Science and Scopus as well. That is another avenue started. So it means that we have to fight. We have to think about the excellence level about the open access journal paper. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. This is very nice discussion, dear audience. I think you have many questions, but I think his presentation is enough for all of the question answer. He come up with a very thorough presentations. I think that you can get a very good answers. Even everything is recorded under our YouTube channel World Talent Economy Forum, and actually Asia Research and Development Institute, Al Noor Academy Sarhadia Barhad, as well as this World Talent Economy Forum. We are working together, and we are promoting this kind of research, this kind of innovations, and this kind of consultancy with the industry and academia. So any of professor your idea and good things, we can collaborate together, and we can do a very interesting conference in the futures. And that is the things we can explain, that around 122 countries we are now connected, and many big corporations and many people from around the world, like US Chamber of Commerce, Harvard University, Stanford University, MIT, Yale universities, even University of Malayas and Petronas, many big corporations and university, they are working with us. And I know that you are from one of the prestigious university, independent university. So hopefully in the future we're going to collaborate together, and we're going to work for creation better knowledge and better community. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sharif and your community. I'm so much delighted that I'm here today, and special thanks will belongs to the Professor Raju as he invited in this
Yes,
online kind of
yes.
platform. And in the audiences, if you have any question, you got my email address. You can
Mhm.
pass to me, and you'll get the reply. You just mention the World Talent Economy Forum, so that I can recall this one, and you'll get the response within 24 hours after sending any query regarding the research question. Okay,
Thank you,
thank
sir.
you,
Thank you, sir.
thank you so much.
Especially, we want to give thanks to World Research Union. They are actually bringing talent people like you. Thank you. Thank you for your
My
valuable
pleasure.
information. Thank you,
My
sir.
pleasure. Thank you
Thank you.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.